Welcome to our channel, where books come alive on screen. Get ready for 5-chapter wonders that inform, captivate, and spark your imagination. Join us in this literary journey where every chapter is an adventure. Rivalry Unleashed, Mexican Mafia vs. Nuestra Familia, by Just Stories. Chapter 1, Genesis of Conflict, Origins and Ideologies. In the sprawling narrative of the Mexican Mafia and Nuestra Familia rivalry, it's essential to start at the beginning, to uncover the roots of a feud that would ignite a decades-long conflict. This chapter takes us back to the turbulent 1960s, exploring the very genesis of this deadly rivalry. Seeds of discontent. The story begins in the California prison system, a volatile and segregated world, where ethnic tensions were rife. Mexican-American inmates often felt marginalized by other prison groups, leading some to seek a sense of identity and protection. It was in this environment that the Mexican Mafia, or La IM, was born. Meanwhile, in Northern California, Nuestra Familia was forming. This group, often referred to as NF, was initially created as a protective alliance for Hispanic inmates, particularly those of Northern Californian origin. Its leaders espoused a different ideology than La IM, emphasizing regional loyalty. The stage was set for a clash of ideologies. La IM aimed to create a unified Hispanic front that transcended regional divisions, while Nuestra Familia championed Northern California's unique identity. These differing visions sowed the seeds of discontent, igniting a rivalry that would grow in intensity over the years. Rising tensions and violent encounters. As the 1960s turned into the 1970s, the tensions between the Mexican Mafia and Nuestra Familia intensified within prison walls. Inmates faced the looming choice of allegiance, La IM or NF. Those who refused to choose often found themselves caught in a web of violence and reprisals. The climax of this chapter unveils the early violent encounters between the two groups. Prison stabbings, beatings, and power struggles became disturbingly common. The conflict spilled into the streets as well, as NF expanded its reach beyond the prison system. This chapter documents some of the bloodiest confrontations during this period, illustrating the depth of the animosity between these two organizations. Rivalry takes root. Amid the chaos, the Mexican Mafia and Nuestra Familia solidified their positions within the prison hierarchy. Each group developed its code of conduct, symbols, and rituals, strengthening its sense of identity. La IM adopted the black hand symbol, while NF embraced the sombrero symbolizing Northern California. The resolution of this chapter marks the point where the rivalry became an entrenched and ongoing conflict. It was clear that the feud would not simply fade away. The prison walls had become a battleground for the hearts and minds of Hispanic inmates, and the Mexican Mafia vs. Nuestra Familia rivalry was here to stay. Seeds of a feud sown. As we conclude this chapter, we recognize that the Mexican Mafia vs. Nuestra Familia rivalry was not merely a clash of criminal organizations. It was a clash of ideologies, regional pride, and personal loyalties. The seeds of this feud were sown deep within the confines of California's prisons, and they would continue to grow in the years to come. In the next chapters, we will delve deeper into the violent confrontations, strategic maneuvers, and enduring consequences of this historic conflict. But as we leave the origins behind, we are left with the knowledge that this rivalry had its beginnings in a turbulent time and place, driven by deeply held beliefs and a relentless pursuit of power and control. Chapter 2, Prison Turf Wars, Battles Behind Bars. Within the formidable walls of California's prisons, a relentless battle for supremacy was waged between two rival Hispanic gangs, the Mexican Mafia and Nuestra Familia. As we journey into this chapter, we'll explore the harrowing turf wars that erupted behind bars, where violence and power struggles became the order of the day. An unrelenting struggle for control. In the 1970s, the conflict between La IM and NF escalated dramatically. Inmates affiliated with these rival groups engaged in brutal confrontations that left prisons stained with blood. The crescendo of this chapter details the relentless struggle for control within the correctional facilities. Prison yards were battlegrounds where allegiance to one group or the other often determined an inmate's fate. Refusing to align with either gang was a dangerous choice that could lead to beatings, stabbings, or even death. The crescendo paints a grim picture of life behind bars during this tumultuous period. Operation Black Widow and the battle for Pelican Bay. As the 1980s unfolded, law enforcement authorities recognized the magnitude of the problem. The climax of this chapter centers around Operation Black Widow, a massive crackdown that aimed to dismantle the leadership of Laim. High-ranking members of the Mexican Mafia were arrested and imprisoned in maximum security facilities like Pelican Bay. Pelican Bay State Prison became a focal point in the ongoing war. Inmates affiliated with Laim and NF were housed in separate, ultra-high security units. This separation was intended to quell the violence, but it often had the opposite effect. The climax explores the intense battles that occurred within the confines of Pelican Bay, showcasing the lengths to which inmates would go to maintain their dominance. A tenuous truce and fragile alliances. Amid the chaos, a tenuous truce was occasionally reached. The resolution of this chapter discusses how some members of Laim and NF recognized the need for alliances in the face of increasing law enforcement pressure. These uneasy partnerships sometimes provided a temporary respite from the relentless violence. At times, even rival gang members found common ground in shared cultural experiences or mutual interests. This period of reluctant cooperation, however, was always on the brink of collapse. The unending struggle. As we conclude this chapter, we must acknowledge that the prison turf wars between Laim and NF were far from over. While there were moments of relative calm, the underlying animosity and competition persisted. This chapter's finale serves as a reminder that even within the confines of prison, the struggle for dominance was unending. The battles behind bars were just one facet of the Mexican Mafia versus Nuestra Familia rivalry, but they were a critical and defining aspect. In the next chapters, we will explore how this conflict spilled into the streets, affecting communities and law enforcement agencies throughout California. The prison turf wars were a testament to the enduring determination of both groups, setting the stage for a prolonged and deadly feud. Chapter 3: Expanding Territories, Street Wars, and Criminal Empires. As the Mexican Mafia and Nuestra Familia rivalry evolved, it extended its reach beyond the prison walls, spilling onto the streets of California and beyond. This chapter delves into the street wars and criminal empires that emerged as both organizations sought to expand their territories and influence. Turf battles and drug trade. In the 1980s and 1990s, the crescendo of this chapter showcases the violent turf battles that erupted in cities across California. Laim and NF sought to control drug trafficking, extortion, and other criminal enterprises, each vying for supremacy in their respective regions. Local communities became battlegrounds, and innocent bystanders often found themselves caught in the crossfire. The crescendo highlights the devastating impact of these street wars on neighborhoods and families, where fear and violence became a daily reality. The emergence of street gangs and drug cartels. During this period, the climax of this chapter explores how the Mexican Mafia and Nuestra Familia expanded their influence by forming alliances with street gangs. These alliances allowed them to exert control over drug distribution networks and other criminal activities. In particular, the emergence of street gangs like the Serenos, who aligned with Laim, and the Norteños, who pledged allegiance to NF, transformed the landscape of California's criminal underworld. This chapter delves into the strategies used by both organizations to recruit and mobilize street-level affiliates. Law enforcement's ongoing battle. The resolution of this chapter highlights the persistent efforts of law enforcement agencies to combat the growing power of the Mexican Mafia and Nuestra Familia on the streets. Task forces were formed, and operations were launched to disrupt drug trafficking networks and dismantle criminal empires. While arrests were made and some leaders were incarcerated, the resolution acknowledges the resilience of these criminal organizations. Even as key figures were taken off the streets, new leaders emerged to continue the fight for control. The ever-changing landscape. As we conclude this chapter, it's important to recognize that the street wars and criminal empires that emerged during this period had a profound and lasting impact on California's criminal landscape. The Mexican Mafia and Nuestra Familia had established deep-rooted networks, and their influence extended far beyond prison walls. The finale serves as a reminder that the conflict between LAIM and NF was not confined to a single arena. It spanned prisons, neighborhoods, and drug trade routes, leaving a trail of violence and disruption in its wake. In the subsequent chapters, we will delve into how law enforcement agencies continued their pursuit of justice and how these criminal organizations adapted to the changing times. The street wars and criminal empires were pivotal chapters in the Mexican Mafia versus Nuestra Familia saga, setting the stage for the ongoing struggle for dominance in California's underworld. Chapter 4: Law Enforcement's Battle, the Pursuit of Justice. In the shadow of the Mexican Mafia versus Nuestra Familia rivalry, a tireless and often perilous battle was waged by law enforcement agencies determined to dismantle these criminal empires. This chapter takes us behind the scenes, providing a glimpse into the pursuit of justice and the ongoing struggle to curb the influence of LAIM and NF. Task forces and coordinated efforts. During the late 20th century and into the 21st, law enforcement agencies realized the gravity of the situation. The crescendo of this chapter paints a picture of a united front against these powerful criminal organizations. Task forces were formed, bringing together federal, state, and local agencies to pool resources and expertise. These coordinated efforts marked a turning point in the battle against the Mexican Mafia and Nuestra Familia. The crescendo showcases the dedication of law enforcement officers as they work tirelessly to gather intelligence, make arrests, and disrupt the operations of these criminal empires. Operation Black Widow and high-profile arrests. The climax of this chapter centers around Operation Black Widow, a massive law enforcement operation aimed at crippling the Mexican Mafia. Key members of LAIM were targeted and arrested, including high-ranking leaders who had long eluded capture. The operation sent shockwaves through the criminal organization and disrupted its operations. Similar operations were launched against Nuestra Familia, resulting in the arrest of key figures within the NF leadership. These high-profile arrests were a testament to the tenacity and determination of law enforcement agencies in their pursuit of justice. RICO prosecutions and legal battles. The resolution of this chapter delves into the legal battles that followed these arrests. The racketeer-influenced and corrupt organizations act played a pivotal role, allowing prosecutors to target entire criminal enterprises rather than individual members. RICO prosecutions led to lengthy sentences for many LAIM and NF members. Legal victories against these criminal organizations were hard-fought and complex, but they served as a resounding message that law enforcement agencies were committed to dismantling these criminal empires. The ongoing struggle. As we conclude this chapter, it is clear that the pursuit of justice against the Mexican Mafia and Nuestra Familia is an ongoing struggle. While law enforcement agencies have achieved significant victories, the criminal organizations continue to adapt and evolve. The finale of this chapter reminds us that the battle against LAIM and NF is a dynamic and relentless one. The pursuit of justice is fraught with challenges, but the dedication of law enforcement officers and the collaborative efforts of task forces remain unwavering. In the next chapter, we will explore the contemporary status of these criminal organizations and the enduring impact of law enforcement's pursuit of justice. The story of Mexican Mafia versus Nuestra Familia is one of resilience and determination on both sides, and the battle is far from over. Chapter 5: Legacy of Violence, the Modern-Day Standoff. The legacy of violence left by the Mexican Mafia versus Nuestra Familia rivalry continues to cast a long shadow over California's criminal landscape. In this chapter, we will explore the contemporary status of these two organizations and the enduring impact of their decades-long feud. A shifting landscape. As we enter the modern era, the crescendo of this chapter reveals that the Mexican Mafia and Nuestra Familia, while still active, have seen shifts in their power dynamics. Law enforcement efforts have taken a toll on both organizations, resulting in leadership changes and adaptations to evade capture. The crescendo explores how new generations of gang members have come into play, often adopting more covert and sophisticated tactics to avoid detection and prosecution. Additionally, the growth of technology and social media has altered the way these organizations operate and communicate. Rivalry in flux. The climax of this chapter highlights that the rivalry between LAIM and NF remains dynamic. While they continue to clash, both organizations have also faced internal divisions and leadership challenges. These internal conflicts sometimes weaken their ability to maintain a united front against rival gangs and law enforcement. This period has also seen alliances of convenience, as LAIM and NF have occasionally cooperated to protect their mutual interests in the face of external threats. Legal victories and continued surveillance. The resolution of this chapter underscores the impact of legal victories against both organizations. Convictions under RICO statutes and other charges have resulted in lengthy prison sentences for key members, including those at the top of the hierarchy. Law enforcement agencies have also refined their surveillance and intelligence gathering techniques, making it increasingly difficult for LAIM and NF to operate with impunity. The unending cycle. As we conclude this chapter, it is evident that the legacy of violence and the modern-day standoff between the Mexican Mafia and Nuestra Familia persist. Despite ongoing law enforcement efforts, these criminal organizations remain resilient and adaptable. The finale serves as a reminder that the struggle for dominance is an unending cycle. As new leaders rise and old ones fall, the conflict endures. The impact of this rivalry continues to be felt in the lives of those caught in its web of violence, as well as in the efforts of law enforcement agencies determined to maintain order and safety in California's communities. Thank you for diving into the world of words with us. If you had a blast exploring this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, share the bookish love with your friends, and make sure to subscribe for more amazing 5-chapter adventures.